Well, I'm Dave Scott. I work at UCHealth in Colorado.
I'm Brian Wilson. I work for Trimedx in Denver.
When we did this presentation, we thought it would be good to team up with the HTM jobs people just to kind of, one, give us a little bit more credibility of what we're talking about for, because you'll see actual job postings that they have right off their site. And then two, we just thought we liked them and we liked the work. So I was hoping there'd be a lot of like earlier, younger people like starting out, but I guess you guys probably have a career path already. A lot of people in here.
Yeah, career path right to retirement.
Yeah. But I think, well, I think that all of you are well on your career. I hope. Well, maybe not. But I mean, this is a good career path for a lot of people, and you can bring this back to your people that you work with, and maybe some requirements or some boxes that people check as they go along in their career. But that's what our presentation is going to be about. And we both have what we thought was an ideal career path. So we'll go ahead and get started. This is my example of ideal career path. And the way that I look at this is hopefully someone that's just coming from, we've actually hired some people like this in our hospital where I work at. We just hired a guy that's a SPD tech, and we hired another person in our north region that was a pharmacy tech. And they took the CAP-T test, passed it, so they had like a base knowledge of just entry level knowledge. So that's what that CAP-T test is for. If you're not familiar with it, it's the Certified Associate of Biomedical Technology. And it's an entry level test that's available through AMY. And they have a BMET 101 study course for it available on the AMY website. So that's a way, like I look at it as getting a foot in the door, kind of like a starting path, like a way to break into Biomed. So after that CAP-T, then any kind of technical person, and it could be like automotive mechanic, anyone from outside of Biomed, I would steer them towards that CAP-T. So when you have them start on the job, they know a little bit about electronics, a little bit about patient equipment. They are able to go, oh, that's a pulse oximeter, that's an IV pump, or that's a pain pump, or like they have a little bit of knowledge to build on in your department. That's what that CAP-T test is all about. So from there, Biomed 1. And my big thing is like, if you work at a job in a hospital, a lot of hospitals have tuition reimbursement. Use that tuition reimbursement to your advantage if you're a tech. And especially if you're a new tech, working at like not having any of this other stuff. Myra, you get tuition reimbursement and you're
I have not used them, but yes, I do.
You haven't used it?
No,
So-
not yet.
So yeah, that's at my work, we get $5,500 a year tuition reimbursement. So in that amount, you can go first for your certificate in Biomed, which I would recommend Biomed College of Biomedical Equipment Technology because it's online. You can take it anywhere in the evenings. Those guys are going to be in here, but I guess they're not going to be in here. But,
They're being leisurely.
I can point them out when if they show up. But so start with that certificate in College of Biomedical Equipment Technology can be directly transferred to an associate degree in biomedical from College of Biomedical Equipment Technology. So in that $5,500 that we get, like at my work, is pretty much if you started at half a year, you get $5,500 the first year, $5,500 the next year. Hey, you're done with your associate degree, or certificate. Sorry, associate degree is a little bit. I think associate's around 20,000. So that's going to take a little bit longer. Still tuition reimbursement. So working towards an associate degree. Oh, clicker got dropped.
Yes, we had a clicker malfunction.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is finding qualified folks to come in, and
That's kind of what the CAP-T is for.
yeah, I never heard about that before. So,
Yeah, the CAP-T, the Certified Associate in Biomedical Technology.
so we contract some things out. Sometimes we get people that they bring over to us, and then we don't quite feel that they're qualified. Maybe it's just maybe a tool I could use to
Definitely.
see if they're
Definitely. So the way that this CAP-T works, And Brian and I were doing a review on it, but I work with Amy also, so they told me, you can't do this, Dave, so I can't do the CAPT anymore. We did a review at the MD Expos a couple times, and then they said, no, we have a product that competes with that, Dave, so you can't do that. So now I just talk about it and look at it. But the way it works is it's available any time of the year. It's an online test. They take it in a quiet room where there's no other people. So one of the things that can cancel the test for someone is other people talking to them during the test. So it's a quiet room where they're by themselves. It can be scheduled anytime, usually Monday through Friday, but they have Saturdays also available. So it's really, to me, I look at it as maybe like a screening test. Do you have the base knowledge to do this job? You got your CAPT certification. It's good for 5 years. And that 5 years is when you're working towards these other things on here in there. So tuition reimbursement, going to school, and to me, this is like ideal career path today. If I was coming in from, I always ask people when I talk to biomed people, or I talk to students, I've done a lot of career days in Colorado with the Biomed Association. Did you like to take things apart when you were a kid? And here, every single biomed pretty much says, yeah, I did take things apart when I was a kid. That was like, so you're a hands-on person. High school students, I always tell them that. If you took things apart as a kid, you would love doing this job because you're taking things apart. Now we're teaching you to put it back together too and make it work again. But that's kind of the person that we're looking for. But then that CAPT can kind of help them get a base knowledge. And like I said, there's a study guide for it. And then they take the test whenever they want. They can take it at their own house.
Is that Amy?
It's Amy, yeah.
They
Amy.
register through Amy?
Yep. I would tell you to go see Danielle, but I know the trade show's already done. But yeah, it's available through Amy. And you'll get that certification. It's good for 5 years. After that 5 years, if they want to keep that certification, they have to retest in CAPT. But at that point, I would say, like, you're going to be doing like certified Biomed certification, the CBET, which is on my next slide or so. But that's kind of my low cost, but low budget, like way of getting into biomed without having to go to school first and going to, like jumping through a bunch of hoops, because you want someone to be able to start today, and maybe start working. And that CAPT, like I said, we hired a sterile processing person, and we hired a pharmacy tech at my work. And both of those people, they found the CAPT and did it all themselves. So they really have a want to work in biomed, and that's the people that we want. We want people that really want to be there. And the guy that we just hired, he's been on the job only a few weeks now. The guy in my shop, another person at our North region. We also have one at South region too. And the South region guy, he's now working in imaging. He started out as a CAPT and he's working towards imaging now. He's like an entry-level imaging tech person now. So as you're going through that, get CAPT, start going to school, first with a certificate, which is available through College of Biomedical Equipment Technology, and then work towards associate degree. And that base certification is 5 years. So this is all like a 5-year plan, the very first part. So do the CBET, which is Certified Biomedical Equipment Technician. That's the course that I teach for Amy, and some of you probably know me from that. And it used to be the Colorado Biomed Association. And that's how I know Myra from that, when she went through the course there. And it got bought in 2019 by Amy. Then Tech 2, you don't need your certification as a Tech 1. You can fall under Tech 2. Somewhere in your Tech 2 time, though, you should be getting your CBET, in my opinion. Other certifications, if wanted or needed, A+ certification, N+, these are all CompTIA up to here. And CCNA is Certified Cisco Network Associate, and Certified Cisco Network Professional. And PMP is a professional project management professional. So you work on projects, and maybe equipment planning or whatever. Like that's another avenue that people could go down. And then I said Biomed 3 or Senior Tech. And then if you're interested, like if you want to go further than Senior Tech, I think that you need a bachelor's degree or higher. And I said business, engineering, or IT is some examples. And then possibly management. If so, maybe a master's degree. And if, I don't see a lot of people that were in my presentation this morning, so I can use my example again. I went to, when I was like, I think I was a manager, and this guy was like either a Tech 1 or Tech 2 that I knew just from Biomed Association and that. And he was going to school for his bachelor's degree, and then he was going to school for his master's degree. And I'm like, you're a Tech 1, why are you going to school for your master's degree? He said, Dave, I might need it one day. That guy's now my boss's boss's boss. So his master's degree, when I was like messing with him about being a Tech 1, he knew what he was doing. He knew he wanted to get into management. He knew what he wanted to do. He planned it out. He paid, a lot of it got paid by tuition reimbursement. And now he's over our whole system. He's the big boss. I call him the Grand Poobah when I see him. So that's suggestion. Then if you get into like higher level, Brian will cover more of the imaging stuff, but possibly imaging or some other kind of specialty.
So I wasn't as imaginative as Dave about this, so I just kind of did a, I don't know, template of my own journey. So basically I started off in healthcare IT. I was a networking guy and didn't even know Biomed had existed. Got assigned on a project to help the Biomed department network a monitoring system and started asking a lot of questions. And I was like, well, yeah, I want to do that. You know, this IT stuff's boring. So that's where I made my change. So my first journey, part of it was through the school. I got an internship at another hospital, and then the following semester got an internship at the hospital that I was working at as I was working on my associate's degree in biomed. So of course I started off BMET 1, doing all the usual BMET stuff. Later got bumped up to BMET 2. Shortly thereafter, got contacted by manufacturers, so I became a field service rep for them. And then after coming back from that, thanks to Dave and the group, went and got my CBET. After that, got bumped up to BMET 3, then a senior biomed, not necessarily an age at that time, but certainly now. Then started off as a image service engineer 1. Shortly after getting into imaging, I went and got my CRES, became imaging service engineer 2, then a 3, and currently I do CTMR.
So Brian is kind of what he did, and more of an example of what I wish was available when I was an entry level. I was a military biomed tech, so I got all my training in the military. Cool.
Yeah, so, you know, I felt I followed a pretty standard path, you know, for someone that wants to be in the technical side of the business as opposed to being in management. So, you know, you could obviously branch out and be a lab specialist or like it's sort of. Yeah, I had an associate's degree when I got my my IT, so I only had to go.
Recommend education, you know, like getting your foot in the door is one thing, but then keep working once you get your foot in the door towards education and getting that degree, and that'll help like later on in your career. And we recommend it early as you can do it, so you don't get other things in your life that get in the way, like being married or having kids or that kind of thing.
Getting old.
So it's always getting old, you know, I'm not gonna put in
Yeah, you got what you got. So the first kind of entry level, if you were to kind of look into getting into the business without really getting into it, would be a clinical equipment technician, basically equipment distribution. They will go and clean and distribute and pick up the dirty equipment. Sometimes some of them, if they're a little more advanced and Biomed's nice to them, do light like PMs. Stuff that's almost like a run to fail, but you know, kind of gives them a little encouragement to do more. Basically, the entry level, no experience, just high school education.
This is someone I would recommend take
And so then, you know, the people that showed some inclination or interest in maybe becoming a biomed, you know, maybe kind of push them towards a CAB-T. Again, probably high school graduate, maybe in college working on a degree. And
So here's an example off of our site, and this is something to point out. We're just going to point out the similarities and maybe even some differences. The job title is a little different, but it still possesses everything that they just went over. So high school diploma or GED. And of course, depending on the company, the experience may vary. But for an entry level, and this is even part-time, they're looking for maybe 1 year of experience in the healthcare clinical engineering field. I think, like they said, that entry level working towards more certifications.
well, a lot of times you'll find people who take these positions may already work at the hospital. They might be in housekeeping or in some kind of like distribution on some of the entry levels there, and you know, they're tired of passing food trays, so they you know, get into this side of the business to advance themselves.
That's what our people do. A lot of the CTs are, we call them CET, clinical equipment technician. They're all, a lot of them work in housekeeping and they work in biomed doing training. And there's actually one guy at one of our hospitals that I'm working with to do his CAB-T test because he wants to get into biomed. He's up at one of our northern hospitals. So he kind of saw that opening, you know, as a way of getting into biomed.
So the next kind of step up, this is more at the school level. So you've already started, you said, yeah, you know, this biomed thing looks interesting. I think I might want to do it. So basically, again, it's entry level, probably has no hands-on experience, you know, like maybe has some education or some other kind of technical training, can be arranged through a school or a biomedical association. Another one that we get a lot of our people from is, say like manufacturer has a recall and they bring in a group of people from one of these labor pools to do the upgrades or do the recall. And those that are kind of, you know, technically oriented or interested in doing the work, they're a good source of recruitment for like an internship. I know Dave had a gentleman do that. They had a recall and eventually recruited him into becoming a tech. Some people have some technical background, you know, like said auto mechanics or IT or some other, you know, they like to mess with things that are technical. Yeah, hands-on people. And it's also as a stepping stone for current hospital employees. So say if you have someone that maybe works the evening shift in housekeeping and they say, wow, I really like what you guys do. Can I, you know, you can bring them in as an intern and see how they'll work out since they already know the hospital and how that works. Again, CAB-T is recommended now that that's an avenue so that people can, you know, have something to say, you know what, I'm really invested in this, not just thinking about it. Most of the time the education is a high school diploma or GED. Probably most cases they'll be working on some kind of a college degree or maybe have some kind of a technical college background already.
Those of you that are in this class, I'm guessing that you're not as interested in the Amy presentation that's kind of going on at the same time, which is about the internship program. And I know a lot of hospitals don't really have internship program yet or set up, but I know I was in the class earlier today with Danielle from Amy, and she said they had a candidate pool of 400 people that are wanting to get into biomed as an intern. So if you have something like that and interested, that's one of the avenues to go through. And there are some, as we'll see in a second, there are some job postings for interns.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a different one. This is an extern program that Canon's offering for field service. Like Brian said, I think the beauty of extern and intern programs is that they require very little experience. So whether you're in school, just out of school, looking to gain experience, I think it's a wonderful way to get your foot in the door. Yeah, this one offers something interesting. They're kind of directing it more towards that. So those following skills that are listed down there, I think this is a good description. It's pretty descriptive. It's pretty thorough. So just kind of explains the hours, what you'd be getting into if you're going to do this extern program, things like that. We can offer, just a little side note, the employers that we work for have given us wonderful feedback saying how their ideal situation is to bring someone into their company as an intern or an extern and help them work their way up. That's the most ideal situation for them. So I think, like you said, these are limited and few and far between, but it's definitely something to not overlook.
And this one is interesting to me that it's OEM, that this job posting. A lot of OEMs like to hire technical people out of the military and train them to work on their stuff. So that, and they kind of don't want them to know that there's the rest of the biomed world there because they want to keep them as their people. So they look at people that have like those same like hands-on skills, electronics, technical ability, and networking and IT experience. So there's a lot of jobs in the military that do that kind of stuff. So a lot of OEMs recruit heavily out of the military. Not biomed people out of the military, but other technical jobs out of the military.
This would kind of be close to that, but the last one actually had a point of being paid. And this is an example of usually an unpaid entry level position. So this would be typically, like you said, in school or working towards school, trying to get internship credit to graduate or fresh off of certification or even associate's degree to get into the field.
BMET 1, biomedical equipment technician, an entry level, little to no experience, works under close supervision, performs PMs, repairs, safety testing, recording functional test data, usually 0 to 2 years experience, typically outside of healthcare, the experience, possibly CAB-T, which I recommend or advise CAB-T. Like I told you, that's a good way to screen people for a job. And it also weeds out the people that, are these people really interested? Like the people that we hired at our facility where I work at, those people definitely wanted to be in biomed because they put the effort forth themselves to do that CAB-T. It wasn't me telling them or anyone else telling them. And even the guy that I'm working with now, I think he might have heard it from the other guy that was a pharmacy tech at the hospital because they kind of worked together. Yeah, Doug.
Hey, the acronym for CAB, again, what is it?
Certified Associate
Associate.
in Biomedical Technology. So you're not a certified technician, you're certified in biomedical technology.
Yeah.
And it's 5 years. It's good for 5 years. Yeah.
Who grades like BMET 1, 2, 3? Did Amy put anything together to say, I mean, I know like the VA, if you look at like, you say you should have this skills, at this point. I think no one really said it that you're like a BMET level 1 or whatever, sorry.
Some of these definitions that we have came from Amy website, is where Brian and I got a lot of these from, but also just looking at job postings and seeing what employers are looking for. That's kind of the HTM jobs people, that's kind of why like that reinforcement of what we're saying is actually what we're seeing in the industry, right? So that's kind of an industry standard. And I know there's a big debate on what do we call ourselves and what do we call this position. And I mean, where I work at BMET 1, we don't have a BMET 1. We have a biomedical associate, it's called. And then we have a biomedical intermediate technician, then we have a biomedical senior technician. So we don't have the typical 1, 2, 3 type of thing, but really it is a 1, 2, and 3, but it's just called something different.
But there's no national standard.
There's not, which makes it really difficult to
Changes
post
for every
jobs.
hospital out there.
But you'll see like with the HTM jobs postings that, and you'll see that they kind of follow a lot of the stuff that we're saying. Was there one more on there or no?
No, this is the,
Yeah, so we tried to pick ones that closely followed the guidelines and the standards that you were talking about. I would say the majority of them do, but I think it raises the point of how employers need to be incredibly descriptive when they're posting jobs, because a lot of times, there are discrepancies between what skills are required of a BMET 1, 2, or 3, and it can get confusing. So Banner, I think, always does a wonderful job about really clearly laying out, the education that they require or prefer, kind of the day-to-day tasks, the benefits that they offer, preferred versus minimum qualifications, I think is always really helpful. So you know exactly what they're gonna, be looking for, and then you know that the added bonus is maybe the things that they would like to see but aren't necessarily required.
These are the things that you have to get past the bot with. So when you do the electronic application, then the bot has to decide whether or not you're, in case those who don't know what the bot is, it's the AI that screens all the qualifications versus the non-qualified.
This feeds into retention too, because in other words, some managers don't want to define exactly what a Biomed 2 is, what a Biomed 3 is, because all of a sudden, if somebody meets the criteria, then they want to be a Biomed 2 or they want to be a Biomed 3. Now, the way it sort of works out there is, HR slots you for so many 3s, 2s, 1s,
Yep.
and entry levels.
Yep. You have to have the available, it's kind of like the military. You have to have an available position to be promoted.
Right. Well, what I've seen with technicians, it's like, okay, I don't know what the rules are. I've been here for 5 years. I'm still a Biomed 1. They brought somebody else in. I had to train that person, on how to use our test equipment, how to use our system. And another hospital opens up a position that's a Biomed 2. They apply for it. They're instantly accepted, and they're gone. It's more than just the money. It's also the prestige of being a Biomed 2, because the Biomed 1 is
the position.
Huh?
The name of the
The
position.
name of the position, because at Sutter, we had some weird names. They tried to mimic off of the IT department. And, we have a biomed specialist and a senior biomed and an intermittent biomed specialist, and it wasn't really working. So then they formed a 1, 2, and a 3. Well, they decided it was a 1, 2, and a 3. And now we're at a point where some of the operations directors really need to sit down and define what is a 1, what does it do? Is a 1 somebody who's got an associate's degree or somebody that has certification? You need to set those, because it's like, if you don't have a goal and you don't see what the requirements are, how do you know when you're qualified to move on to the next level?
Yeah, we talked about that in our presentation about 10 things we want to know, that it's very loosely defined. In one organization, a 1 would equal a 2, or a 2 would equal a 3. So it just, I guess, luck of the draw.
Someone in that class said something about, is it that one or another class, but they sometimes have, promote people before they're actually to that level, like they're Biomed 3, but they don't have certification, they don't have an associate degree, they don't have, all the boxes checked, but they were so short of people, they just promoted this person to 3 and they have 2 years experience or whatever. But to me, if I'm a technician, I guess, that job loyalty thing, I guess, is kind of, if you want to stay at that job, then you're going to stay there. But if you're looking for other opportunities and you see other opportunities, sometimes jump around and get ahead. You have to change positions. One of the guys that I work with, he just recently got promoted from associate, which is a Tech 1, to intermediate tech, and he just got his CBET also. But he thought he was going to get like a 10 to 20% raise, and I went on Indeed and I typed in, raise at, promotion or whatever, and it said 3 to 4%. And I told him, I think you're kind of being a little unrealistic. If you want to get a 10 or 20% raise, then you need to change jobs. You need to find another place to work, and they'll probably pay you 10, 20% more, but do you want to work at that other place? No, I want to work here, Dave. Well, I think you need to weigh your options, because this is what you're going to get. And I think your expectations are way too high. So when you have good people, Joe, I think you find a way to promote them or find a way to somewhere to put them, but because you want to keep that person. But yeah, people are going to jump around, and I think that's maybe the fastest way to get ahead in your career is maybe jumping around a little bit.
Okay,
Maybe
it is.
not being super flaky and staying there like a year or something, but a couple, 2 to 3 years at each place.
It's not a matter of jumping, okay? It's a matter of assessing yourself about every 3 years. Where are you with this company? Are you up for promotion? Or is it, I had a hospital that they used to tell me, they had a Biomed 1, Biomed 2, Biomed 3, and they all started about the same time within a 4-month period. And they all had 20 years experience in the hospital. It wasn't a job that the one couldn't do that the 3 was doing, nor the 3 that the 1 wasn't doing. But that was the way the hospital was laid out, that they had this done. But you have to assess yourself every 3 years. You have to think of the skills that you gain as building blocks and a pyramid. If you're building that pyramid, you're going to have a broad base. And you have to have skills. And every time you get a new skill, you sort of plug it in there so that you have something to fall back on if you lose a position. I've stepped back several times. One, I stepped back so I could go back. I had the time to go back to college so I could get my master's degree. But when you don't have assess yourself, it used to be you got on with, like, I'm going to use GE as an example. The thing, oh, you work for GE. That was like, when I was coming up, that was like the ultimate. You got on with GE, you were set for life. When I did some recruiting,
You have a pension plan.
they did that pension plan. They had a car. They had, health, benefits that were excellent. But what they didn't have was a life, because the field service reps were running everywhere and anywhere, being called out on weekends, being called out. I couldn't get to home to my daughter's sex recital because I had to be down in Virginia Beach to work on a device, because their monitoring system was down. So
You have to weigh the pluses and minuses.
you have to look at it. But what is my next step? When I've been here for 3 years, will they have the position? If I want to go into X-ray, and I did fix X-ray, I sure didn't want to work for a Biomed company that didn't have any X-ray. I want to get on with a company that had X-rays and was going to willing to teach me on their X-ray so that I could add those building blocks into my pyramid.
I think sometimes people put their job requirements kind of vague, because I know people, and you probably, I look around them, and I'll see you all shake your head, and you know people too, that they like, that's all they work for. They work for, oh, I need to get my certification. I'm going to put, as soon as I get my 2 years experience, then I'm getting promoted. They want to check all the boxes, because there's people out there like that just check all the boxes. But we have a guy, he's probably been at our company like 5 years, I want to say, and he's an entry level tech. He's taken the certification test once, I think, and flunked it. But as far as experience wise, you'd think that he should maybe be moving to tech 2, but he's not really ready for tech 2. He's still going to be at a tech 1 level, and he can check all those boxes he wants, but he's still, his responsibility that he has, which is not something that's like as tangible as like some of those degrees or certifications. It's not tangible.
3 years
It's just the
experience,
person.
seven times over.
It's the person too. You have your superstars, and you have like your people that come in and get the job done every day. So those are the superstars, the ones that move up real fast, and that people that get the job done every day. They're still good people, but they might not get promoted as fast.
You ready to go to the next?
Education versus training. So this is, I don't know if it's really a debate or not, but education to me is any kind of degree you get. A certificate in biomedical technology, which is that first step I had on my ideal plan. And then associate degree, bachelor's degree, PhD. And then training, I consider that, and hopefully I think maybe everybody else does, is like some kind of actual like equipment training, like manufacturer training or RSTI, that kind of training is actually like on equipment or technical skills training instead of education. Your education part, both of these, the good thing about them is they go with you wherever you go. And I would say to keep a good record of both of them, and especially like all your certificates that you get, and you should get something from MD Expo saying that you went to these classes. Keep a record of all that as you move on, and could help you. I would say, like what I do is when I go to my annual review, I bring that with me and say, here's what I did. Like here's the classes I went to, here's the classes I taught. I've done, this is what I did this year when I do my annual review with my boss. So that's training and education. Education is kind of a bigger picture, and training is more like smaller day-to-day type of picture.
You want me to do this one, or you want to?
Go ahead.
Okay. So on next step up, BMET 2. So basically someone that's been probably, in my mind, like 5 years, but I guess the industry norm is now more like 3 years experience. This is a time when you start doing more advanced equipment like, life support, defibrillators, that type of stuff. You're kind of a guide or a mentor for your lower level techs, kind of help them, learn some of the stuff that you've already taken care of. By this time, you should have a good base of classes and certificates that you've taken. About BMET 2 is probably about when you want to be looking at doing your CBET. Some places require that you have your CBET to be a Tech 2. Again, that's kind of a suggestion. Probably have some kind of formal education, maybe a technical certificate or an associate degree. If not, you're probably in school working towards one.
So I would say 2s and 3s are kind of what we're lacking in the industry right now. And to your point of, you would typically say 5 years, we're seeing a trend of employers maybe knocking down the requirements to that 3-year just to fill with people that have experience. So here are 3 years of experience in electronic mechanical or electromechanical repair is what they're looking for at the base level of the 2. And again, it's dependent on the person, like you said, it could take longer, but that's just something we wanted to point out of 2s and 3s are typically right now in the industry, what we're missing.
When I was in the presentation earlier, they were joking about a Tech 2, like a Tech 2 is like a unicorn.
Yeah.
You can't find those, we want someone with 5 years experience Tech 2. And apparently that doesn't exist too much. Senior biomed technician, highly experienced tech, usually 5 or more years experience, capable of highly skilled work, capable of difficult repairs, broad knowledge of practices, procedures, and types of equipment, education, usually an associate degree or higher. Where I work at, you have to have an associate degree to be a senior tech, and you have to have certification. And they ask you for, my certification ran out last year, and I got a nasty letter from the credentialing people I work for a university, so I guess that's maybe why. But the credentialing people, you need to resubmit your certification renewal, or your computer access is going to be turned off. Okay, I better get on that right away because I don't want my stuff turned off. So CBET may be required, and I know a lot of jobs are starting to require that more as their senior level positions.
Yeah, so for this one, I think kind of highlighting the education and the education piece of it. The first line says associate's degree in, or equivalent military experience, or 2 years of equivalent experience. So like you said, like the higher up you go, you would imagine that it's required to have at least an associate's degree, if not more. But like we're saying, the standards have dropped significantly because these positions, especially BMed 3s, are nearly impossible to find. So I think that it's definitely interesting. But yeah, same with minimum 5 years experience work with Biomed.
I think some of those positions too, they're like when they hire a senior position, they want to have someone that kind of can hit the ground running. And like say me, I work at a hospital that's all Philips monitoring, and they have GE monitoring. Maybe that puts me back a little bit, because I'm not able to hit the ground running as fast as someone that has the GE experience. Yeah.
I would say the same thing. I think if you're applying for a job and an interview, you want to ask them where they're going to put you, essentially, because I think that's kind of a key question, like you said. What experience do you have, Philips, GE, or like, I just want to know where you're going to put me in the hospital. Are you going to put me in the dungeon? You want me to work over here on the Alice?
We're all in the dungeon,
We're
all in the place.
But they already have an idea because they, put the job posting out there, what they need. They don't always tell you in the job posting until you get to the interview where they want to put you, and you may not want to be in that area. You might find out real quick in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I work in the burn ICU as one of my floors that I take care of, and I know a lot of my coworkers, like I can't work in. One of the guys I work with, he was burned as a kid, and he said, Dave, I can't even go in there. He said it's like, I guess, traumatic experience for him. PTSD, maybe, I guess, is what the new modern term is for it. But he said, I can't deal with that. I don't want to ever go up there. So, I mean, I deal with it, but I try not to look any more than I have to. When I have to go in patient rooms, but I mean, it's not an easy floor to work in, and I've been in there when people have been yelling and screaming, you know, and they're in pain and they're getting, they go in the tub room and get washed, they do debridement, skin debridement. Yeah, it's not fun. And it's just, to me, it's just part of the job. I've never been burned, so I don't have to deal with that. But like you said, depending on where you work at, that could be a game changer for you.
So the next one, basically, once you hit a 3, you got some different career paths that you can go. One of them is to work in the lab. So I think most bigger hospitals have the lab guy or someone that's more familiar with the lab equipment than just the regular techs. So typically you want a highly experienced tech, somewhere around a 2 or a 3, 3 to 5 years experience. Basically, you're going to want someone that can work without any supervision, or, you know, because the lab people with CAP and the other regulations are very meticulous in their requirements. You also need to retain or maintain the records for the regulatory agencies like CAP. You should have some advanced training, preferably on lab equipment. I would imagine you'd want someone with at least an associate's degree or a lot of experience. And they used to have a lab certification. They've gotten rid of it. So probably a CBET is your, you know, kind of benchmark.
So not to sound like a broken record here, but again, every job description is different based on the company. So Mayo, they're very thorough with what they put in, lab services. So in this description specifically, they're pointing out some of these certificates that they would like you to have instead of just equivalent experience, or kind of broader, which again, this is nice because when you're going through, it eliminates some of that interview time. You can know up front exactly what you have good experience in, if you're actually qualified for it or not. And again, like you said, the lab science training programs for lab technicians matches up nicely with what you were saying.
I think sometimes too, when people are applying for jobs, I know like when we were talking about planning this, when we were going through all these job positions, I do this job, but I don't even feel like I'm qualified for something. But you don't always meet all the expectations of every one of these positions. So I always tell people, you know, you should apply for it because, you know, you might be better than anybody else that's a candidate for it. So you don't have to check every single box on a job posting to apply for it, but I think you should meet some of them. And then it's up to the employer if they want to hire you.
I was a little surprised on this one. So we call this our busted knuckle club, guys that work on the sterilizers. So they actually want more experience to work on the sterilizers than the lab positions, which I find kind of odd because you want someone that's really experienced with as a technician, but I would thought that the lab was a little more refined and a little more critical. So here they want at least 7 or more years of biomed experience, be able to work without supervision. A lot of times you got to come in after hours or early hours. You have to maintain your records in your tests for the regulatory as well as the department. You need advanced training on SPD and OR equipment. A lot of these guys will work on like the OR lights and booms as well, and tables. Typically in education, associate degree or higher. I would even say equivalent service, because I know people that get into this that aren't, that don't have a degree. And CBET recommended, you know, this is kind of one of those gray areas. It's probably a good idea, but I don't know in this line of work if that's really necessary.
I think Brian and I are friends with one of the sterilizer guys. His name is Bruce. I think Bruce is he's a I don't want to say he's a licensed plumber. He has a plumbing license from the state of Colorado. So he's a licensed plumber. He works on sterilizers.
Yeah, so for this one, it's kind of a shorter job description, but we took Michael Hughes, we were in Michael Hughes' presentation earlier, and he's been really focused on the discrepancies in job titles, but for the sterilizer positions, he said that he found that it was almost always the same job title. So I think similar, yeah, it was very interesting. So I think similarly, it's kind of the same requirements for each, is very predictable, you know what you're getting into. So I think that maybe sometimes they don't need to provide that much more experience on the job requirements, because it is kind of thorough throughout, so.
Kind of like if you're willing to put up with the punishment, you got the job.
A disclaimer at the bottom.
Yeah. Like people with small intellect, strong will. So this is kind of, do you want to, since you did imaging, you want me to, okay.
I need to speed up a little bit.
So another specialty you can get into, you know, after you peak at either being a BMET 3 or a senior, is getting into the imaging arts. I question my decision on a fairly regular basis, so take this for what it's worth. So getting into imaging, a lot of times you'll start off as an image service engineer. Typically what we'll do is we'll take someone that's inclined, that's interested in getting into imaging, and we'll just dump them with all of our ultrasound stuff. So we don't have to do that. We're a little bit of yeah. I don't know. I don't mind injectors, but ultrasound I just hate. So we'll try some of the aspiring biomeds and give them the ultrasounds and see how they do with that. One of the important things that you have to be able to do is to be able to manage your outside vendor repairs if you're not in a organization that has that. So being able to make sure that the vendor shows up in a timely manner and completes the job, and communicating with the department is a big requirement. So customer service. Probably want a CBET, but I really don't see a lot of imaging guys certified. I don't know what the resistance is to it, but that's not a, yeah. Somewhere around 2 to 5 years of biomed experience, that sounds about right for like getting in. It's like an ultrasound guy. Certificates from like vendor or x-ray training schools. Education, either a biomed certificate or an associate's degree. In our case in Colorado, you have to have a state license, so you have to present your credentials to the state and then also take a test. So they just don't let anyone make x-ray. No, I have a license. Yeah, yeah.
Registered with the state.
No, we get an actual real, because if we goof up, we'll lose our license and our ability to work on that stuff. So
Some states have that. We do in Colorado.
So when HCM jobs first started, we were focusing primarily on BMETs. And we quickly learned that a lot of people use BMET as a stepping stone into imaging, or that they would like to move into imaging. So we recently have really started getting a lot more imaging positions, especially because they're even more niche than an average BMET. So typically with these descriptions, they are lengthier, and you see a lot more specific experience that they would like you said. So I think this is a great one, and they even have preferred down there, which I think is great, is some AD, like you're saying, the CBET.
Next step up is Imaging Service Engineer 2. Just like Biomed, you know, it's a step up. Typically, you'd be working on some of the more advanced systems. You might be doing mammo, nuke med, maybe even interventional or cath lab type stuff. You'll want someone that's, you know, had at least 3 years or more imaging experience. I think kind of the rule of thumb with the imaging is, you know, almost 5 years before you really know what you're doing.
I think this is where you find that genius person that's burned out and going on those calls.
Yeah, exactly. Likes to go home at 3:30.
Yeah, they like to have the schedule instead of just whenever they are needed.
Again, with the CRES, with the certification, it's a good idea to have, but I'll be honest, the industry really doesn't follow that real closely. They're getting more interested in it, but in all the years that I've been doing it, I think, I don't know, there's like maybe 15 people in Colorado that have their CRES. It may be a little more, but yeah, it's a really low number compared to the, you know, CBETs. Probably will want to at least have an associate degree, and again, may need a state license to work on it.
Yeah, I think we put this job description, because it aligns with, kind of the industry standard for the title. But also I think it does a great job of listing out all the different types of equipment to have experience on. Some of the employers that list with us, I think do a great job of explaining the pieces of equipment or types of experience that they prefer that you have or require that you have. And then a lot of them also, not this one, but list kind of the growth opportunities within that role. So, okay, you need to have this amount of experience on, these types of equipment, but there's opportunity and we highly encourage you learn these things and we'll teach you that along the way. So I think that, and we see that a lot in the imaging position. So I think that's an interesting.
I think some of these too, they might lean towards like different manufacturers, like if they're hiring for, I don't know, Philips systems and you have experience on Philips systems, then kind of puts you one up on who doesn't have experience on that.
No, it's more like hold your beer and hold my beer and watch this, If you know how to work X-ray system works, you're good to go. So ISC3, normally this is someone that's been in the business. Now, like I said, in the school I came up through, probably closer to 10 years. You'll want to have a lot of experience in working in advanced stuff like cath lab, IR, maybe some CT, MR. Also maybe have specialties like mammo or nuclear medicine. Another important thing, since these are high value systems, to be able to be smart about when you need to call the vendor in, and also to manage your customer, because when a CT goes down or an MR goes down, it goes all the way to the C-suite. And so you'll want to keep everyone informed on what you're doing, what your ETAs are, and what the resolution is. So you need to be really skilled at your customer service as well as your technical skills. You should have several advanced training certificates by this point, either through the vendor or through a X-ray specific school. I really can't imagine anyone being that high up without some kind of formal education. And again, in some states, you will need a license to work on the equipment.
Yeah, so like you were saying, at this point, it seems pretty strict. So I think if you're ready for this. And again, I think what you said, you need to have great communication skills, and we haven't really seen a lot of that in the other job descriptions, but here they have excellent customer relations and communications in this job description because it is important, and maybe even highlighted what they really value when applying.
Cool. You want me to do this one? So another one is an IT technologist technician. You can almost kind of say that this would be almost like a PACS administrator type level of knowledge, or someone that's really schooled in like IT, so that you want to have them working on your interfaces between the equipment and the IT network. So ideally they'd kind of live in both worlds. They'd be adept at being a good IT guy and fairly adept at being in biomed. I think we all have like one or two of those kind of guys that are just, geared that way, but they couldn't tie their own shoes if they wanted to. So, they provide support for the hospital information system, the lab information system, the radiology information system, and PACS. You would hope that they'd have degrees like A+, N+, S+, and CCNA and CCNP. IT really is big in certificates. So, with the training certificates, that would probably equal a lot of the education that we look for in the biomed world. Again, associate or bachelor degree would probably be ideal. Hopefully no one's in that realm as far as being the IT guy. I didn't mean to insult them, but, being a former one, I guess I can call out my own.
We don't see a ton of these jobs, so we were excited when we did have one to kind of compare with yours. But I think kind of what you talked about in the last slide, like it's in the same realm of, the experience that you need or the certificates that you need, but it is a different avenue. So Trimedx offers this position that we had on our site, but yeah, I definitely think that it's something different than what we normally post, and we've talked about it, but it's definitely a pathway that I think is interesting and something that could be enticing to a lot of people in this industry. But yeah, they spelled out everything pretty much that you said. That
Yeah, and I work in a big hospital network, and we have like 2 guys. They're theoretically IT guys, but they also have technical skills, and they're really important for us for our recalls and cyber alerts, which we seem to get an endless amount anymore. So these guys are, we do our best to do our patches on our equipment, but if it's just really not working, or it might require some more advanced changes on the IT side, we can call these guys up and say, hey, my RNF room needs a patch and I can't get it to go through to the network. Then these guys show up, and it's like 10 minutes and they've got everything going after you spent 2 hours bashing your head on the machine trying to figure it out. So it's really nice if you have that luxury. If not, I guess you just kind of stumble through it.
This is one that I kind of see the line being blurred in the future, because I think that Biomed people will be able to do IT more, and IT people probably won't do Biomed as much. So I think that like a lot of the schools now are trading in IT. So as that goes on, it'll become more of a Biomed centered thing.
You want me to go on this one too? So field service engineer. So I technically, that's what I do. I travel from, we have 8 hospitals, and I go from site to site and work on the CTMR stuff. Also, a manufacturer would have a field service engineer, basically someone that they call up and say, hey, my room's down, I need someone out here like yesterday. And you drive on site and get them going. You may also have like a vendor, like GE, Philips, et cetera, that you would call them, and then they would do the same thing. You probably want to have a good amount of experience and training to get to that level. Typically, you're by yourself at bad hours of the day, working weekends and holidays and stuff. So, you wouldn't want someone that's fresh out of school or with limited experience on doing this.
We're running close on time, so we're
I know,
like, well,
we're
your
getting
point.
Yeah.
I was gonna say everything we agree with.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
BMed supervisor, this is someone who supervises other biomeds. Certification might be required. Usually it's someone who has quite a bit of experience. They maybe coordinated projects. They might even do people's annual reviews, hire, fire, works closely with the manager or director. And it could be even the person that runs the whole program, depending on the size of the hospital or place they work at.
Click.
Pretty much, sure, clinical engineer, this to me is like more one, it seems like the VA has a lot of
Yeah.
these people more than anybody else. That's what Danielle is from the AME, if you guys know her. She's a clinical engineer. Graduate degree, master's or bachelor's in engineering, maybe even clinical engineering, which I know is what Danielle went to school for. Performs engineering level, considerably difficult work, may investigate equipment incidents, conducts analysis of devices and or systems, possibly a certified clinical engineer, a CCE. I've never worked with a clinical engineer, so I know people that are them, but never at my job. I think it's maybe more of an East Coast thing than it is a West. Is it? That's what you see, Doug? Yeah.
And there's probably not
East
more
Coast
than,
and then the VA.
there's probably not more than 250 of those folks certified.
I know the VA in Colorado and Denver, they have 4 clinical engineers, 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And the clinical engineer is the department director at the VA in Colorado anyway. It's like the main boss, I guess, and then there's a manager or supervisor underneath that person.
Segue.
Clinical engineering supervisor, kind of the same thing, but higher level, more experience, maybe even as high as a PhD level, and most likely is a CCE at this point. So average is 5+ years, and they supervise other clinical engineers, kind of like the 5 people I said at the VA in Colorado. They have one that's their supervisor, then other people under them.
The same level of experience, same requirements, all of that. The hierarchy though, I think they're pretty descriptive in what they expect. And I think candidates know if they're qualified or not.
Yeah.
And they probably don't meet all the requirements, like we said earlier. They just
Right.
apply and meet
Yeah.
hopefully most of them or some of them.
Yeah,
Yeah. Department director or manager, significant amount of technical and or managerial experience, bachelor's degree or higher, skilled equipment selection, familiar with the accreditation process. That's one that we haven't seen yet on any of our other slides, so the accreditation part falls on that director. My director has a master's degree, I think in IT, I believe is what his master's is in. Supervises, not the other guy that I said was my boss's boss's boss.
Oh,
He has an MBA. Supervises BMETs, so on, coordinate projects, annual review of employees, maybe annual review of managers or supervisors underneath them, maybe certified, and maybe called a chief technology officer or vice president of healthcare technology. Like we said about giving someone a title instead of a promotion, I guess.
These typically get the most, it's just an industry trend right now, are easier to fill because people are looking at that last kind of step in their career. So manager, supervisor, VP, all of those.
Are you guys familiar with HTM jobs? All the people in here, raise your hand. Yeah.
I think so.
You guys know Kristen.
People are sick of that.
So they post jobs like we saw on here. And if you have job postings or looking for someone, they have a big network of people. It's a good place to post a job to get a job filled. And if you're looking for a job, they can
We
set
do
you
that
up
too.
even by the part of the country you're looking at.
Yeah.
So this is their contact info. Doug, did you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Kristen, you talked about CRES, okay? I wouldn't imagine there's more than 350 of those people certified.
Yeah.
And I've got one company right now that's coming to me in Cape Girardeau, Missouri for a certified radiology equipment specialist.
Mhm.
And I keep telling them. "Don't work, hey." Now, he said, if you have the job requirements as preferred, you know, I can
That's
help
what a
them
lot of
out,
them
but
prefer.
I've had 2 or 3 where they've come in and said, Doug, I really need a guy that's certified. Well, you can be looking forever for that because there aren't that many of them out there. Like, what do we got? 30,000 certified BMEDs, Dave?
I don't think it's even that much.
Like, it's not that.
It's kind of speculating, would probably be nice information to have in the future.
Yeah.
But I think there's more engineers than you actually think. VA
Yes.
has some true, but I know that Kaiser has quite a few.
Yeah, Kaiser's another big one that has
Yeah.
clinical engineers. One of my friends in Denver is a CCE at Kaiser in Denver, Micah Brown. You know, I don't know if you know him. You don't work in Kaiser. Yeah, Kaiser and the VA are big in clinical engineers. Micah Brown. That's me. Isn't that your name? That's not MIKA. Wait, maybe he's your son. Yeah. He's not quite as old as you. He's a lot younger than me. Yeah, he works at the same time as Kaiser. Yeah. So, thank you, everyone.